Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. It'll be quite nice. Have a good time. It'll be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Catch.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work. Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, Smackdown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cells.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power.
Listen to the podcast. Subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good mic work commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Saturday once again, everyone. What's going on? And welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast for April 23rd, 2022. And I got to tell you, man, we are definitely in that post-Wrestlemania kind of lull. Up until midnight last night, I almost didn't come up and do a podcast today. I felt the news and the material and everything we were going to get into was relatively light, and I wasn't even sure if I could fill a whole episode. But once I started, reading through some of the news and making notes, I'm like, okay, we can easily fill a 90-minute podcast here and get some stuff out of the way, because I think this coming up week could be a little bit light here on the channel due to, number one, a lot of things really not going on in wrestling right now. Plus, I got a really busy week next week, so next week's going to be weird. So I figured I better get up here now so I can hang out with you guys this weekend and discuss this past week's wrestling results, the news, the matches, the title changes that we saw. We got a couple of pay-per-views coming up, 2 weeks for WWE and about another month away for AEW. And we have some big news, too, regarding AEW in New Japan. We've got some news on Bret Hart, some news on Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, FTR, Mike Tyson beat up an airplane passenger the other day. So all sorts of fun, little random stuff to get into this afternoon. And we got a big watch-along scheduled for tomorrow. So it shouldn't be a long episode, but still plenty to get into today. So if you are spending your Saturday with me, I want to thank you for being here. And thanks for waiting for me as I was coming up here a couple of minutes late this afternoon as well. As usual, you guys can please hit that thumbs up button for me. If you're not a subscriber, please do that as well. And I'm going to cruise over here to the chat and say hello to everybody. Then we'll go shout out the patrons. I'll let you guys know what we're going to do tomorrow for the watch along. And then we will start rolling through news. And I hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. But I want to say hello to Tatanani, Jay Lambo, Ernie Garcia, Chaz, Jay Lambo. Oh, I got you already twice. How Wheezy's in the house. So is Population. Nice to see some monkey wrenches in here as well, along with David Brown, Cobro, Sam, Rodrigo, WWE fan forever, rarely even, Andy Linnell. We got Al Ramos. We got Jimmy Anderson all the way across the pond, I believe, from Sweden. And we have David in here from Scotland. Right on. Glad you guys are here. And thank you very much, Jimmy, for that super chat as well. It's great to see you. Sam, Red Raven Rucker, Ben, Lil Justin. I probably say these names twice all the time. I'm sorry for that. M, Divine Ricks, and Muhammad all in the house so far. Hope you guys are having a great one. I also want to shoot over here to the Patreon channel, or Patreon page, excuse me, and go over here to my relationship manager, because that's where I manage all my relationships. Sometimes I look at a relationship and I'm like, that shit needs to be managed. And that's where I do it, is right over here. I want to thank Chris Cray. I still am looking for that file you asked me for. I know I have it. And I can't find it. So I'm still kind of looking. Once I do, I will get that over to you, Chris. And thank you as well for your support on Patreon. Chris is sponsoring a classic pay-per-view review next month in May of Over the Edge 1998. That's a good one. So I want to thank you, Chris. Also, Chris Broski, Divine Ricks as well, JJ Legg, Darren Piper, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Deshaun Robinson, Martin Can, Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Nick Musser, Jimmy Anderson, K-Dogs, Kennel, Ryan Y., who I did see your update, by the way, Kevin. Hope you're doing well if you are in here in the chat. Devlin Husband, what's going on? Yes, still coming to Hawaii in July. John Redifer, Claudio Clavedetster, Reese Jones, Barry MK, Josiah Blevins, John Riffle, Michael Kumo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, and Blake Moran. Dudes, as always, I appreciate all of your support. Over on the Patreons, if you want to do any of that supporting, check down in the description. You can find links to everything you need down there if you like this channel, like what you hear, and want to help out. In addition to that, why don't we talk about this weekend, tomorrow night. Hope you guys can be here. We're back for another classic pay-per-view watch-along. We've been doing Backlashes this month in April, and we're going to do Backlash 2004 tomorrow. A link, unfortunately, is not in the description, but the link is up on my page in the classic pay-per-view watch-alongs playlist. I think it's the second one down. When you click on my page, you can go find that video right now. Click on it and save it for tomorrow. That one should be fun. A lot of requests for Backlash 2004. A couple of weeks ago, we did Backlash 2002, the big Hogan and Triple H match. And this one, of course, is kind of known for the Randy Orton-Mick Foley hardcore match, which is pretty fitting that we're doing this right now since Randy Orton is currently celebrating his 20 years in the WWE. I believe the exact date on that will be on Monday. They're going to have a big celebration for him on Raw. And let me just, I'm going to put this link right here in the chat. Just if you guys want to click this now. That is, I didn't write Backlash, but that is the Backlash 2004 link for tomorrow. And then the following Sunday, a week from tomorrow, I don't believe there's any pay-per-view or anything like that in the way, so we will schedule a watch-along, but I think we're going to move away from Backlashes and do a show that I was at, Unforgiven, 1998. This was held in April, back in 98. It was the first ever Inferno match between Taker and Kane. And we also had the Dude Love and Stone Cold Steve Austin main event that set up the Over the Edge pay-per-view that we're going to review next month. And that was also the show where Ric Flair was rumored to be circling the building in Greensboro. And my buddy and I went. We met a few wrestlers that day. I know we met Ken Shamrock. Mark Marrow and Sable, who I'd already met before. And I think we even ran into some people at the Waffle Houses and gas stations. We met a shit ton of people that weekend. It was a blast. So I think we'll come up here a week from tomorrow and talk about Unforgiven 1998, since I was way up in the cheap seats for that one. But it was a blast, and we'll be looking at that next week. So just keep that in mind for next week. Luigi DeRog Gaming, I want to thank you for that $10. Thanks so much, dude. My dad here in Michigan. Hey, Dad. Oh, hey, Dad. I'm your dad. Hey, Dad. Here in Michigan, we got 3 inches of snow 2 days ago, and today it's 80. Enjoy that good SoCal weather for us, and I just want to say the UK tag titles are my favorite design. Yeah, they're pretty good-looking belts, I have to say. Man, I don't miss living in Michigan, because you get those cold-ass winters, but then you get those crazy hot summers, and then you get those weird temperature fluctuations, which usually spawns a lot of thunderstorms and shit like that, which I'm sure you were probably experiencing if you had an 80-degree day a couple days after some snow. And that's nuts. I remember a couple years ago, before my dad passed away, it was the same year Warrior, it was 2014. It was the 70th birthday. And my sister and I went to Chicago. We took him downtown. We got a big hotel penthouse, and we went out on the town. And the first day we got there, it snowed. It fucking snowed. And it was 18 degrees and snowing. The very next day we got up and it's hot. We were really close to downtown Chicago where the Bean and all that shit is. We put shorts and t-shirts on and walked down to the Bean and took pictures and all this, 48 hours away from a lot of snow. So that's the way the Midwest is. It's nuts here in San Diego and in Southern California in general. It's incredibly consistent here, which is what I like. I'm all about consistency. Good to see Skull Vikings in here as well. Oh, I did not know today is John Cena's 45th birthday. I'm glad he's 6 months older than me. Thumbtacks oversell. What are you talking about? For Backlash? I don't even remember. We'll have to watch that tomorrow, because I don't remember the details on that. But I do remember watching Backlash 2004 in a bar. I had driven back to the town I used to live in, which was about 2 hours away from the town I currently lived in back then, and drove back and hung out with a buddy of mine at a sports bar where they were playing the pay-per-view. It was pretty fun, but I had to keep my drinking to a minimum because I had a 2-hour drive to get back home. But I do remember watching that show and it really being the night, I think. And Mick Foley has this tendency to do this with people. I talked about this when Triple H retired. I said the night that I became a Triple H believer was when he beat Cactus at the Rumble in 2000. And Randy Orton was the same thing. I just thought, even though he was very good, he had a great look, third generation guy, natural athlete, I still felt like he was just a little bit too pretty for wrestling. So when I saw Randy Orton get down and dirty in that match against Mick Foley, I was like, oh, that kid's he's going to make it. He's going to be just fine. And here we are 18 years later, and he doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing down. As a matter of fact, Randy Orton appears to be having the most fun he's ever had in his life, and you love, love, love to see that. So anyway, that ought to do it for the pleasantries. Oh yeah, Britt Baker's birthday is also today. I saw Adam Cole wish her happy birthday. So yeah, we got a lot of birthdays, a lot of April birthdays going on right now. Well, let's scroll back up here to the top of my notes and let's start talking about news. Now, it was an interesting week of TV shows this week. We're going to talk about last night's Smackdown and Rampage, but I got to say, I wasn't terribly impressed with either show. Smackdown felt like the very definition of a skippable show. I found myself kind of randomly off last minute last night, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get to watch Smackdown. Kind of wish I wouldn't have watched it, because I'm like, this is just nonsense. It's just so redundant. And we're still a couple of weeks away from a pay-per-view. They got a UK tour coming up, which means last night was a double taping. So they taped next week's Smackdown last night after last night's Smackdown. I have not read the results, although I do know we got a beat the clock challenge on that. And I think something else. I forgot what the fuck else they're doing. Oh, cage match with Sammy and Drew. And I think a contract signing with RK Bro and the Usos. So last night just felt like a whole lot of nothing. And then when you get over to Rampage, crowd seemed dead. I think they taped that after Dynamite on Wednesday, but the crowd just wasn't even that into much of what we saw. And it really got off to kind of a quiet start with the Cole and Ishii match, which was kind of a bummer. But Jade Cargill did get a big win in the main event, and we did hear Hook speak for the first time. So the Friday shows were not good. I think AEW did much better on Wednesday, and WWE did much better on Monday. And that's what I've been trying to say all along about WWE, is that there's never going to be a time where one of their shows is going to be consistently better than the other, because at the end of the day, it's still WWE. And I said that a few weeks ago when, everybody was, really dumping on WWE Raw. And I'm like, oh, SmackDown's really got it going on. And I said on this podcast, I'm like, that can change at any time, because it's still WWE. It's still Bruce. It's still Vince. It's still the same minds putting together storylines and angles and matches for just a different set of roster members. It really is going to be the same at the end of the day. And here we've seen that tide has turned in Raw. I thought Raw has been pretty entertaining for the past 2 or 3 weeks, and last week was a pretty good show. When you compare Monday's Raw to last night's SmackDown, there's no comparison in my mind. I know Raw wasn't all great. A lot of fans didn't enjoy seeing Theory win the U.S. belt, but I could see that title change coming a mile away. But we had the wedding. We had the lie detector test. There was a lot of goofy, fun shit on Raw last week, and I think Raw might have been the show of the week. I can't believe I'm actually fucking saying that. But when I look at all 4 shows, both from each company, I'm probably still going to go Raw number 2. Dynamite was pretty good, but Raw was up there. Raw had a solid show, didn't need Roman Reigns to do it, and still had a 3-hour show where they kept, 60% of my attention, which is pretty good for WWE, because I did not come up and do a Raw review on Monday either, because I just assumed the show was going to be a bunch of shit, and I didn't feel like doing one. So maybe on Monday, we'll be up here again. This, I'm not really totally sure. Go ahead and plan on it, because I think I might even be missing this week's Wednesday watch-along. I'll have some more information for you tomorrow or Monday. But this could be the first of 3 straight days of streaming. You're definitely going to see me tomorrow, and you'll probably see me Monday too. After that, we're going to go on a little bit of a 3 to 4 day break there until we get to next week's podcast. But when you look at the results this week, I really think that Raw and Dynamite were the stronger 2 shows, and especially on the WWE side of things. Last night's SmackDown, I don't recall seeing too many shows where it was just 2 hours of literally nothing. I mean, literally nothing. You could have not done any of this, and your storyline progressions, or like where they currently stand, wouldn't have been altered at all. It really, really was a skippable show. So we'll get into a little bit of that stuff in terms of the results and whatnot, but mostly we'll be talking about and looking ahead to Double or Nothing and WrestleMania Backlash, which is in just a couple of weeks, I believe May 8th, which is Mother's Day. That's going to be a crazy day for me too, because I'll probably have to work that morning. That'll be fun. Can't wait until Backlash. Why don't we get into the news first? We're going to talk about Dynamite here later on, but I think the top of the list on the news end of things would be the working agreement that now is official between AEW and New Japan. They are going to be co-promoting a joint pay-per-view on June 26th entitled, of course, Forbidden Door. And it's going to be in Chicago at the United Center. So that's big. That's a week or so, a couple weeks before Money in the Bank, I believe. And United Center, I've said all along, AEW should really try to make that their Madison Square Garden. That CM Punk return show was incredible. And Chicago was kind of their town. And WWE has never really ran that building. Apparently they are running it for a live event sometime in the near future, but overall, since that building opened back in 1994, I mean, SummerSlam 94 is the only show I can think of that's really been there. So AEW should try to make that their big building, their MSG, their go-to arena for a big show or anything major to happen. And having this New Japan joint show is the perfect place for that, because those fans are really going to enjoy that type of wrestling, and it's going to create so many potential matchups. I mean, I think we've seen Daniel Bryan's name listed with like 5 other guys. It's going to be really tough for AEW and New Japan to decide who exactly he's going to work with, if they're going to put him in the ring with Okada, or if it's going to be somebody like Zack Sabre Jr. or anybody in between. Either way, Daniel Bryan's going to have a great match. We're probably going to have to see CM Punk take on somebody. Punk and Okada got brought up a couple of times, which I really like. And we don't even know, according to Meltzer anyway, we don't know at this point, because we got to get on the other side of Double or Nothing first. But we don't know at this point if it's going to be all New Japan versus AEW matches or a mixture of both. There could be New Japan versus New Japan guys, AEW versus AEW guys. We're probably going to see a lot of multi-man tags, I would assume. You got to know we're going to see at least 2 or 3 of those type of matches. I don't know if any belts are going to be on the line or not. Who knows? But you'd think also that when this agreement came together, that some of this stuff had to have already been discussed. You know, you're not going to come together and do a joint show and have a working agreement with zero details. You know, you're going to at least want to hammer out, say, all right, we're not going to put any titles on the line, or we're going to make sure that whoever goes over, it's an even split. You guys will win the same amount of matches as we will, that sort of thing. Because as we saw back in the 80s when WWE was taking over and some of the territories were kind of coming together to create those super clashes and shit like that, a lot of it was pretty much due out of desperation because Vince was growing at such a rapid pace and they were kind of seeing the writing on the wall. So they banded up, you know, figured all this talent together could, you know, rival what Vince has. But it was a clusterfuck from the word go. This is going to be a little bit different this time because these are, you know, the whole business in general is different in just the way it's run and how, you know, promoters behave and things like that. So there's not going to be too much going on, you know, people getting screwed over or contracts being tampered with, because back in the day it was so different. But it really is hard to get promoters to cooperate and for everybody to want their guy to go over. So all that's going to have to be, you know, let's just say carefully managed, because when this was attempted back in the 80s, it largely did not work. You know, even though it drew out a pretty good crowd and everything, you know, the show itself, there was too much red tape and politics going on to really get anything done in the ring. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a completely different situation here. And this is, you know, this is something AEW is doing for the wrestling fans. Now, of course, there's been a lot of talk, which we called on Wednesday. We watched the watch along. We watched Tony Khan make this announcement. And from the minute he came out there and announced the deal, announced the date, brought the president of New Japan out and the whole deal, I'm like, okay, it's probably already started. You're going to have people on Twitter who are going to forcefully downplay this and purposely be unexcited for it. Just because of this, you know, tribal war that we're going on, this stupid promotion war with the fans, the AEW and WWE stuff. And we've heard a lot of things this week about the casual fan. AEW isn't doing anything to attract the casual fan, which I don't believe casual fans is even a real thing. And they're not doing anything to grow their audience. Bitch, like WWE is. Look at WWE's numbers across the board, every category: attendance, ratings, merchandise, ticket sales. All this stuff in the last 20 years from 2001 till today has been on a steady decline. What do you want AEW to do? You know, to be so transparent about this, to be so anti-AEW that they create a working relationship with another promotion, to find that is anything other than awesome, you know, really just exposes the bias that you have. And wrestling fans should love this type of thing. This is what wrestling fans have been clamoring for the longest time, because we've been so sick and tired of WWE owning the complete entire wrestling universe. And all we see is WWE content, WWE's way of production, the way WWE does things. The fans have been desperate. Pro wrestling in general has been desperate for a little bit of competition here in North America. We really haven't had that. Not even TNA really got going, even at their height. You know, they were still had really wishy-washy TV deals, and things were a mess behind the scenes, and the ownership changes and all of the turmoil going on there. You know, they were a company that felt like they were constantly fighting an uphill battle. And even when they started gaining some traction, they were making monumental mistakes, bringing in Hogan, bringing in Bischoff, trying to turn their company into another form of WWE, but on a smaller level. And I'm like, well, we already have a WWE. You know, TNA got themselves over and got notoriety and recognition from the fans for offering something different than Vince. I was never a fan of the six-sided ring, but it was something different. The X Division, the type of athletes and the talent they had there that was showcasing wrestling and athleticism and stuff like that. That's what really got them, some success in the first place. So of course, TNA shits the bed. Impact is still hanging on by a hair somehow, but they're not who they were before. Now we've got AEW who comes along, who was just much more stable in terms of their ownership, their funding, and the type of money they have backing them. And they actually have a cable TV deal, nothing weird, no Spike TV, no weekly pay-per-view stuff, or all the other crap that TNA went through. They have a stable deal, although I do know there are some issues behind the scenes with the Turner Network and TNT and some of the ownership changes there that could affect AEW in the future. But in terms of the backing and the finances they have behind them, it's much, much different than TNA. And it feels good for wrestling fans to finally now have some legitimate competition, some people who are sick and tired of watching the same redundant nonsense in WWE. You now have another product that you can flip over to and watch that instead. If you are a real, true fan of wrestling, because you've liked wrestling. I've been watching wrestling. I'm in my 6th decade of watching wrestling, which is insane when I say out loud, but at the end of the day, that's what I am first. I'm a wrestling fan first, not a WWE fan. And when you only have one product to watch, you're desperate, you're salivating, you're thirsting for something else to watch that's just different from the same shit that you see every goddamn day. And we finally have that now. And it's a wrestling company that really seems to be focusing on the pro wrestling part. Yes, they are still pro wrestling, encompasses everything, including silly wrestling, weird wrestling, hocus pocus, curses, guys coming back from the dead, murdering their parents, being set on fire. All that stuff encompasses all of professional wrestling. But in terms of it, being a pro wrestling show to, the overproduced circus that WWE is, that's what they're trying to do. That's the audience they're trying to target, is the people that are tired of that stuff. WWE really presents and produces their product a certain way. As wrestling fans, you do not want another company doing the same thing, because we saw that happen to TNA. They were doing it right, made a U-turn, decided to go head-to-head on Monday nights, make their ring square, bring in Hogan, bring in Bischoff, bring in everything that is going to destroy them. And for AEW to not do that, and then the fans be like, or the haters, I should say, not fans. These people are not fans. To say, oh, they're not doing anything to grow their audience. I'm like, they're 3 years old. People compare AEW's numbers to WWE. Oh, AEW, they only got 930,000, for Dynamite. SmackDown got 2 million. But Raw got 1.6. Okay, that's still pretty good for a company that is 57, count them, 57 years behind their competition. WWE is going to be around for 60 years, I believe, next year. TNA is less than 3 years old. Or I'm sorry, AEW is less than 3 years old. We're talking about a 57, a 5.5 decade head start that the WWE has. And AEW, only after this amount of time, is getting half or more, in a lot of cases more, of their ratings. If Raw gets a 1.5 and Dynamite gets 1 million, that does not seem like it's so lopsided to me. I think WWE was kicking WCW's ass way worse in the ratings, and WCW was doing the same to them. I think the gap was even bigger back in those days. So you have to look at where wrestling is in general. Wrestling in general just isn't as popular anymore as it was 20 years ago. Everything has been on a decline, largely because of WWE and their bullshit. So when you look at wrestling and the wrestling audience that is there to be had now, I think AEW is competing just fine. Their numbers compared to WWE's they definitely are competitive. AEW's numbers compared to WWE in 1998, not even fucking close. Any idiot with 2 eyes can see that. But it's about where wrestling is right now. And where wrestling is right now, it is in a pretty big downturn in terms of overall, basically just overall fan support and all of those crazy numbers and those ratings that they were getting back in the day. And back then, there might have been more of a casual fan in existence, because there were a lot of people that, even though they didn't really know wrestling, knew Stone Cold, knew Goldberg, knew DX, knew the NWO, kind of watched it casually. Those people have left. Now it's the hardcores. Most of us hate watch WWE every fucking week. A lot of people hate watch AEW. They go on Twitter and talk all about how they think their show is shit. I'm like, what the fuck are you watching it for? Just to tell everybody that you don't like it? It's not going to change anybody's mind. So isn't that a waste of time? All your tweet is going to do is circulate around the shitbags that you associate with, which really renders your shit-ass opinion pointless. So why even fucking make it? You know what I mean? So I think that with wrestling, you've got AEW trying to cater to the wrestling fan, and only in this kind of insane type community can fans find that to be bad. Can find a wrestling company who's trying to please as many wrestling fans as they can. They find that to be a negative. They find that a downfall. That's going to be a downfall of AEW. All of this argument that this New Japan show isn't very big or isn't a big a deal. It might not be a big deal to you, but it's going to be a big deal to some other fans. And no matter what your stance is, for any wrestling fan during any time period, to look at two wrestling companies that are separately owned coming together to work together, that's awesome no matter who it is. It doesn't matter whichever two, if it's Impact and AEW, if it's WWE and ECW back in 1997, or any other, basically co-promotion, is always awesome and is always kind of cool and surreal and super fun to see that. So I think this is a fun announcement. Is it going to make AEW larger than WWE? No, I don't think anybody thought that it was. That's a lot of the argument I see on the other side. Oh, yeah, sure, they're just catering to their own audience. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Are the Rolling Stones catering to the Backstreet Boys audience? No, they're catering to theirs. I don't understand why, these arguments. It's so flimsy, it's so transparent, and it's so fucking empty. I mean, these are empty, flimsy, completely frivolous arguments being made as to why the New Japan deal is stupid and it's a waste of time, as if it's going to decrease AEW's business for them to reach another audience, and send some of their guys over to Japan, have some, working agreements together. WWE has been in talks with New Japan several different times. Haven't we, throughout the years, talked about the possibility of WWE and New Japan working together, especially since a lot of Japan guys were coming in and working for the Black and Gold NXT during that time period? There was lots of talk about that. And we all said how cool that would be if WWE and New Japan started working together and we could get a Tanahashi or an Okada in WWE. Even though I think if New Japan's going to work with anybody, AEW is probably better for that type of thing, but still the idea of an Okada or Tanahashi match in WWE to me was awesome. I was like, I hope that happens because that will be really cool. I've always wanted New Japan to work with somebody, one of those two companies in over here, but it turned out to be AEW, and I'm fine with that. I would have been just as fine as if it was WWE. And all these arguments, you wouldn't have been hearing this. You'd be hearing the opposite. Oh, WWE got to New Japan. That's where all the talent is, and now AEW's lost out. That's what they'd be saying. The very same people that say the New Japan and AEW Forbidden Door show isn't that big a deal would be going nuts. They would be jizzing in their pants if WWE and New Japan created a working agreement, because then they would be like, aha, AEW, you lost out, aha. It was a lose-lose no matter what. So if you are one of these people that sit so firmly on one side or the other of this stupid fence that everybody seems to be so concerned about, then naturally you're going to twist your opinions to suit that. So I think it's silly to believe that a New Japan and AEW working agreement is going to harm either company in either way. That's fucking silly. It's going to give us a pay-per-view with a jam-packed house with some unbelievable dream matches. And if you are a fan of professional wrestling, two guys getting in the ring and wrestling with each other, you should like this show. But if you're so caught up, if you hate AEW because their fans bother you, then this show is not going to be for you. And I advise you not to watch it because you're going to be a shithead and you're going to be a douchebag and you're not going to shut the fuck up about how all the fans bother you so much when you can just tailor your Twitter timeline to not see that nonsense. Those cult fans don't bother me. They don't bother me because I'm going to like what I like without their input. So I just think I wish kind of everybody would do that. So I, at the end of the day, don't care if anybody thinks it's a big deal or not. I don't give a fuck. I think it's a big deal. I'm excited to see it. I can't wait to see these matches. What you want, I give two turds about. To me, it's what I want. If me as a wrestling fan, me as the consumer, I'm happy about this announcement. I'm not saying you have to be happy, but don't make up bullshit about why it's not a big deal. It's not an industry-changing announcement. It's not going to completely change the landscape of wrestling. It's not going to create a Stone Cold or Rock or NWO or DX level of overness that's going to completely shift the balance of power in pro wrestling, and AEW is going to put WWE out of business in 6 months. That was the type of shit that I did hear from the TNA audience back in the day that drove me nuts. It was fine to support your product. I love AEW. I enjoy Dynamite, or I enjoy AEW's product more than WWE, at least right now. That could change, but for right now, what is the date? April 23rd, 2022. I, Greg Morgan, currently enjoy AEW more than WWE. But that could easily change. That could easily change any day. You know, it's just what's going on right now. And I think that's, at the end of the day, what's important is that you as a wrestling fan are entertained. And I would never, at this point, let any other wrestling fan sway my opinion of what I like, because I think everybody should be confident in what they like. You shouldn't walk around, you know, sniffing the boots of Jim Cornette and just taking every single one of his opinions and adopting them as your own. That's weak. That is weak shit. You should think for yourself. You should be confident enough in yourself, in your own wrestling fandom, to trust what your brain tells you like and what you don't, and not worry about, I think I like this, but I better go make sure Jim Cornette likes it too. Otherwise, I can't like it. You really have people thinking that way in wrestling all over social media, on Twitter, IWC, all that other bullshit that you see. It's ridiculous. So I've really, really tried my best just to put that shit out of my mind and ignore it as best I can and just enjoy wrestling for what it is. We got two North American wrestling companies that are both doing relatively well. AEW, I think, is doing great, you know, for a company that's only this old. You know, they've already had $1 million gate. They've put 20,000 people in an arena, I believe, twice. No other company's done that after only 3 years in existence. Look at what their talent roster has done since the beginning. You know, the beginning is of, you know, Peter Avalon and Leva Bates and Jimmy Jacobs and Joey Janela and Marco Stunt. Now it's Keith Lee, and now it's, you know, Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, and now it's CM Punk. Now it's Swerve Strickland. Now it's Samoa Joe. They have really added a ton of talent, credible talent to their roster that has made them a really fun-looking pro wrestling company on paper. So now that they have also picked up and owned a Ring of Honor, they're working with New Japan. This is fun. This is an alternative. This is exactly what I always wanted TNA to be. This is exactly what I wanted TNA to be. A true, real pro wrestling alternative that you can trust, that you know isn't going anywhere, that you know doesn't have a whole bunch of fucking backstage turmoil and financial problems and shit like that. This is great. This is what wrestling fans want. So I'm excited for June. Now, what matches we could see there, title matches, that is all going to be determined, I think, in the next few weeks, because we still have Double or Nothing coming up at the end of May, a show that I'm going to be at, and it does look like, based on what we saw on Wednesday, that it's going to be headlined by CM Punk and Adam Page. And man, part of me was like, oh shit, they should put the belt on CM Punk, but part of me is like, no, Page should beat him, because it feels like that's what guys like Punk and Danielson and Jericho are there to do, is try to preserve and, you know, forward the future of the business with a lot of the talent they have there. So if that is going to be the headlining match, that's interesting, and it will be really interesting when the dust settles from that and what we see starts to shake out for the Forbidden Door card. Because I almost think like it's almost too early today. This is 2 months away, so it feels like it's too early to start predicting matches yet, but that doesn't mean AEW and New Japan can't start laying some groundwork for that either. So Kenny will probably be back for that. You could do Kenny and Okada again. You could do Kenny and Jay White, which I think makes the most sense, at least right now. But shit, there's possibilities out the ass, and that's what makes it fun. Isn't that what you want? You want possibilities. You want dream matches, and we're going to get all that stuff in just a couple of months, and we might even get a little bit of it before that, because we're already seeing a lot of New Japan talent work its way into AEW. We saw it just last night with Ishii taking on Adam Cole in that Owen qualifier. So I, for one, am very happy about the Forbidden Door, regardless of what any other fan thinks or says. Bret Hart has been the topic of a lot of conversation as well, especially in AEW, because another reason why I love AEW is because of the way they love Bret Hart. And three specific pieces of talent in that company really, really love Bret Hart, and that is FTR and CM Punk. Now, FTR this past week, on Dynamite, it was announced that Cash Wheeler and Dax Hardwood are actually going to face each other one-on-one this week on Dynamite in an Owen Hart tournament qualifier. That's really interesting because they're tag team champions and they've always been a team, and now they're going to wrestle one-on-one. I like that just because of how much these two guys love the Hart family and love Owen. I can relate to that totally. So they are willing to put their partnership aside for one night. They've even gone on record and said it doesn't matter if we wrestle each other. We will never break up. Our bond is as strong as ever. And they're going to have a good little contest. Now, with how much Bret Hart's name has been tossed around, not only with the Owen Cup, we were wondering if he might even be there to present the trophy. I think Martha's going to be there to present the trophy, and I don't even know the relationship between Bret and Martha right now. Last I heard it wasn't good, but maybe things have changed over the years. Who knows? And, of course, Bret Hart was there to present the AEW title to the winner. He was the first guy to hold the title up when Jericho faced Adam Page. So he does have some history in AEW. AEW loves him. FTR have been teasing that they're going to be bringing in a manager. Lots of chatter that Bret Hart could be brought in. We've all been sitting here expecting it. As a matter of fact, Bret Hart's going to manage FTR on June 10th for Big Time Wrestling out on the East Coast. I think that's the Detroit version maybe. But that's an indie event. That's not an AEW event. Well, Meltzer has reported this week that apparently the belief in AEW is that Bret Hart has actually quietly signed a multi-year deal with WWE, probably some sort of a Legends deal. And that's why we haven't seen him in AEW yet, is because he's been probably contractually bonded to WWE, which will forbid him from appearing in AEW, but maybe not other indie events, which would explain why he's able to manage FTR on June 10th, but hasn't appeared in AEW just yet. Now, as a Bret Hart mega fan, I honestly am fine with whatever happens here because on one hand, Bret Hart coming into AEW would be fucking awesome, especially if he managed FTR. I even put on Twitter on Wednesday when that match was announced between Dax and Cash for the Owen tournament. On Wednesday, I said, oh man, okay, so what if FTR faces each other one-on-one? And I immediately thought back to 25 years ago, right after WrestleMania 13, Owen and Davey are tag team champions, but they're not getting along. They hadn't been getting along for months up until this point. You could trace their problems back to the fall of the previous year. And so now it finally comes to a head. They actually face each other one-on-one. I'm pretty sure the night after WrestleMania 13, or no, that was the taping. It was the week after WrestleMania 13. They face each other one-on-one. Something happens in a match. I think it's a DQ, but they're at each other's throats. And finally, Bret Hart, the freshly turned heel Bret Hart, comes out there and gets between them and separates them and gets on the mic and professes his love for Owen and talks to Davey and says, these fucking fans have had us fighting for years. This is bullshit, and brings the family back together and reunites the Hart Foundation. And I thought it would be cool to see something like that happen. Maybe Dax or Cash loses their cool. One of them gets disqualified, or it's a double DQ. That's what they should do. Neither guy should advance to the tournament. And they should just do a double DQ, and then they just start brawling in the ring. Referees are trying to pull them apart, and they just are just trying to tear each other's throats out. And then out comes Bret Hart. Bret Hart comes down to the ring. He gets on the mic. You two are the best. You two guys are the best tag team I've ever seen since me and Anvil, and just goes on and on about how great they are, and brings them together and uses his Bret Hart mojo to bring back Cash and Dax. They share a tearful embrace. They hug. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. And they all hug Bret, and Bret's with them now as their manager. I thought that would have been a great way to book that. However, if Bret is staying in WWE, you got to think about who Bret Hart is. And I think, you could kind of put him going back to WWE in a little bit of the same category as Cody going back there as well, because I said I think one of the big factors to Cody going back to WWE is WWE basically owning a big chunk and the majority of Dusty Rhodes' legacy in terms of his footage and all of that stuff. And Bret Hart, as we know, that's been very important to him. Back during his hiatus from WWE, when he was not on speaking terms with them for 12 years or 8 years, whatever it was, he had said time and time again that he is pissed that they own his entire career. He use any of his footage because it's all owned by WWE. And when he was able to come back in like 2005 and do that DVD, I know some of that was in the contract agreement, is that he could have access to some of his footage, maybe even outright own some of it. I don't know how any of that worked or the details, but that was very important to him. So if he goes to AEW, there's not a whole lot of stuff they can have that with Bret Hart's likeness in it. So if Bret Hart is looking for legacy preservation, then honestly, WWE's the better place for him. WWE's where he made his whole career. You know, his little run in WCW was forced because WWE basically made him go there, and it completely sucked, and it ended his career prematurely. And WWE owns that footage too. And I believe they own all the Stampede stuff. So there's very little that AEW could use in terms of Bret Hart, in terms of bringing him in as a manager. He would be largely invisible. He'd be like a Tully or a Jake. You know, he would be there sometimes, but I don't think Bret's really that interested in traveling, 2 shows a week anymore and that type of stuff. So if he has, in fact, re-signed with WWE in a legacy capacity or some sort of contract that's going to keep him there indefinitely, I can't blame him, because that's where his whole life is. That's where his whole career is in WWE. And AEW probably had a lot to do with that. They probably had a decent relationship with Bret, even when he went over to AEW to present the title or to be there for the inaugural title match. Probably wasn't something that bothered WWE too much, but now that AEW is growing, and obviously AEW has some interest in Bret, and they're doing the Owen tournament, that was probably a big reason why WWE might have reached out to Bret and said, all right, let's put a good deal in front of Bret just to ensure that he is WWE and he's not going to go over there and be a part of that Owen tournament or manage a team or anything like that. It was a way for them to keep the Bret Hart name and legacy under the WWE banner. And Bret Hart probably benefited a little bit from that, financially, from AEW being there. I think they probably, if this is in fact true, to me it implies that WWE probably gave Bret this contract to keep him away from them, which if that puts some money in Bret's pocket, then I'm totally cool with that. So if Bret Hart has in fact signed with WWE, I don't think he's coming in there to do anything major. He might make an appearance or two. They might release a Bret Hart special. We're way overdue for one, it feels like, on Peacock, on one of those 24s or those 365s or those evil documentaries or something like that. We need some sort of Bret Hart thing done. Or actually, we did get one. Didn't we get one on the A&E? We got one in the A&E. Okay, so we're not that far off from it. But I feel like if Bret Hart has signed with them, he could be there to do, a couple of appearances or something minor. But I don't think he's going to be brought in to have any sort of storyline written for him. I just don't see it. Where in AEW, I don't think he'd be doing a ton either, other than just managing the FTR, which Bret has never really been in a managerial role. There's no, who's to say that would even be any good. So I would love to see Bret come in just for FTR. I mean, I just know as a wrestling fan that's probably a little bit close to them in age. Obviously, I'm older, but, they grew up loving Bret Hart. So if you even have a chance to have somebody like that manage you, that would probably be a dream come true for me. So at least they get that on the independent level. Just looks like it may not happen in the WWE. Now, there was also a story that came out this week about WWE actually being interested in bringing back FTR, which I think they were interested in keeping them there. They were never released unless they asked for the release and finally got it. I forgot which one it was. But they were offered, when they were still there, I think they were offered extensions and they were like, no, we want out or something like that. So I'm not surprised that WWE's interested in bringing back in another great tag team, because they are one of the best in the world. And WWE's got some great teams over there too, especially with the Usos and the New Day when they're full strength. And of course, RK Bro. And bringing back FTR would be a huge boost for their tag team division, especially if these morons are going to keep 2 sets of tag team titles. But I'll believe that shit when I see it. However, if Bret Hart is going back over there, maybe that would be a way. Hey, if you come back in, we'll make Bret your manager. Maybe this Bret Hart FTR thing could actually happen, but happen in the WWE, not AEW. It's possible, but I don't know how much stock I would put into that story just because of how we know FTR left WWE. I don't feel like they've been mistreated or mishandled really anyway in AEW. I feel like maybe their title run could have lasted a little longer, but I think they're really hitting their stride now and certainly making names for themselves and creating a really great tag team legacy for themselves. So maybe they go back to WWE. I personally think no. I would be blown away if they actually made that decision, but you can't really say definitively that nobody's going to go, because Cody is all the evidence you need to know that that's bullshit. If Cody will go, anybody will go. It just depends on the situation, depends on the contract, depends on the money, depends on all of that stuff. So I am certainly not going to be arrogant enough to say no way in hell does FTR go back to WWE, but my gut tells me they're not going to be going there anytime soon. Speaking of WWE departures, Kushida is out the door. His contract apparently expired and either was not renewed or he didn't want to resign. I think he didn't want to resign, and I think he's already got a start date set with New Japan, so we should see him back over there very soon. Best luck to Kushida. Really liked him in NXT. Didn't think he was going to go much further, though, once Jacket Time started, and probably the best option for him is to get out of there. We also have some huge milestones to be celebrated this week. Roman Reigns has surpassed 600 days as Universal Champion. And it's funny, in my mind, in my wrestling mind, and I know I've actually probably accidentally said this several times on the podcast, in my mind, Roman Reigns won the belt at SummerSlam. I don't know why I think that, but for some reason in my head, I've always told myself Roman won the belt at SummerSlam in 2020. He didn't. He came back at SummerSlam 2020 in that main event, beat everybody up, and then that was the year where they had like the pay-per-view 1 week later. So wasn't it 1 week later? Like the following Sunday, they had the pay-per-view, and that's where Roman won the belt. So this August will be 2 years since Roman has won that title, and he seems to be showing no signs of slowing down either. So congrats to the tribal chief on an amazing run, a run that honestly I didn't think was possible in modern times, even with multiple world championship belts. I've been saying that for years with two title belts. I've been saying this at least for 10 years. With two title belts, you can afford to have one champion with a long run. They've done it a couple of times. They did it with AJ. And then who else held the belt for a year? Maybe Brock or something. And I was always fine with that because there's two titles. Don't freak out. You held the belt for so long. I'm like, well, you got another fucking title to worry about, and you got AEW. Watch one of them. Shut up. So I didn't really care when title runs lasted long. If anything, I wanted them to last longer. But just with the way the wrestling fans are programmed to think these days, and the impatience level and the inability to have any sort of patience at all, I just didn't think it was possible. So, and you can still see that now. Roman still has, even though Roman is a million times better character than he was when he was John Cena 2.0, Roman still has a whole bunch of people. I see it every day in the chat and shits. Roman still has a whole bunch of fans that do not like that he's been champion this long. That's their problem. I love it. I want him to hold it for 1,200 days. Go 2 more years. Break Hogan's record. Bruno, that ship has sailed. Ain't nobody going to have an 8-year title run. But it is possible if you've already made it 600 days. Why not? Why not go for Hogan's record? Why not have Roman beat Hulk Hogan's championship run that he had? I think that would be awesome if he did it, but that's going to be asking a lot. We're not even halfway there yet, so that tells you something. By the time we were to get to that, then even the fans that didn't have a problem with Roman probably would by that point, just because that's the way fans are. So it ain't going to work, but I do like that we have a title run this long. It's impressive, man. It really is. I mean, Roman deserves a lot of credit for this type of longevity, because in the way the business moves so unimaginably fast, 600 days as one world champion, that's a long time. And I can't see anything on the immediate radar that tells me that Roman's title or one of those titles is in jeopardy in the near future. Although it does look like they've dropped the Shinsuke Nakamura match and are probably going with Drew McIntyre now at Backlash. Still don't think that's going to matter. I still think they're going to try to do the bloodline holding all the belts before they split the belts back up, because the Usos are going to go to unify the tags at Backlash against RK Bro. And one team is going to be successful there. I mean, assuming there's not a disqualification. So one team will unify those belts, and assuming that will be the Usos. After that, we have to wonder what WWE is going to do with these championships. Are they going to split them back up and go back to the original brand extension or the brand split? And I really wish they would just get away from that. I think that what they're doing now could maybe even potentially be a test for having a floating world champion and a floating tag team champion and a floating women's champion. I think that's what you need. And then I think the IC and the US need to remain intact. Do not unify those and make those kind of the number one titles on Raw and SmackDown. I've been begging for this forever. And then you can have the champion just float back and forth. He'll feud with a SmackDown guy one month and a Raw guy the other or whatever. But it's Monday night, last Monday, showed you that Raw can still be entertaining without Roman being there. So I think the networks are going to have a big, play a big role in this too, in terms of WWE's plans. They're probably going to have to discuss this with the networks. But, I think if you divide the time up equally, divide Roman's time up equally, that's probably another reason why they want to keep the belt on him right now, so he is available to work both shows. But if Roman ever loses the belt, that's going to put him back exclusively on SmackDown. So you have to wonder if they'll just do away with the brand split altogether. But I would be satisfied if they had a compromise and just did the floating champions thing. They did try this when the brand split first started in 2002. It lasted like 4 months or whatever it was until they got to SummerSlam. And then they brought back the World Heavyweight title that Triple H won and then would go on to run with. But the way they did it right at first, I thought was pretty good. And I brought up the IC in the US, compared them to the TNT title in AEW, and I was talking about how I loved that AEW has really good, high-quality TNT title matches, main events scheduled for Dynamites here and there, that great Cody and Sammy ladder match, and a lot of other TNT title matches that they've done in the main event have been great. Why can't WWE do the same thing with the Intercontinental or the US title and put those titles on the line, one of them at least, each week on TV, or just have some sort of great main event every now and then for that championship will elevate that championship. Then you can have your world champion and your tag team champions and your women champions going from show to show. It's going to be really hard to manage that. I don't trust WWE from a creative standpoint. They can't manage two separate rosters. So how are they going to manage them if they're crisscrossing? It's not going to make anything really at the end of the day any better, but it would make a lot more sense and would reduce a lot of the titles that you have and the championships that you have, because it's silly. You've got so many damn titles in the company that I don't know what the statistic is, but like 1 out of 5 wrestlers can be champion in the company. You got that many belts. And look at the women's tag team division. You have women's tag team champions and there are 2 teams in the division. So I think any sort of alteration there and reduction of championships would be a good thing for WWE, would simplify things a little bit, might even make, storylines a little bit easier for the fans to follow, and would maybe help limit a little bit of these starts and stops, because it's really disheartening and annoying when WWE doesn't know what they're going to do from one day to the next. They brought out Shinsuke Nakamura a couple of weeks ago to interrupt Roman, and we were like, oh, okay, good. They're probably just going to do Roman and Shinsuke at Backlash, and then for whatever reason they changed their mind and they're going to go with Drew. And I'm like, okay, well, why didn't you think about that 2 weeks? Why wasn't Drew the plan all along then? You know what I mean? So it's just this, they're flying by the seat of their pants, and the storylines and the creative suffers for it. And imagine if WWE put the same effort into their creative, or into their production, I should say, that they do their creative. The production would be staticky. It would be all in black and white. You'd have a bunch of cutouts, abrupt commercials. The lower thirds would be all misspelled. Wrong theme music would play. It would be a mess. Their production is so state-of-the-art and so streamlined, and their creative is literally run by monkeys. I don't know. I don't know why their priorities are so unbelievably out of whack in WWE, because some of this stuff creatively in WWE seems to have relatively simple solutions. WWE, if they book themselves into a corner, it's always their own doing. And a lot of times when they start something, the fans just sitting here chatting in the chat when we're just shooting the shit, we can come up with better ideas. Oh, here, they should do this. And then, of course, they do something completely stupid that makes no sense. So with Roman holding the title that long, maybe this is giving WWE the time to think. I know thinking is hard for that company, but maybe it's giving them time to think about what to do. Maybe there's a better way to produce TV, because we do have competition now, and Raws and Smackdowns are becoming more and more redundant by the day. If you end the brand split altogether, then you're going to reduce the amount of TV time for a lot of your stars. But if you just have floating champions, that will still allow you to have mostly separate rosters and won't diminish too much of the TV time for anybody. And I just think that at the end of the day, that might be something they should be willing to try, because they've been doing the same thing for, the last couple of decades, and it hasn't really worked out that well. So they should try to have some different kind of fun, you know what I mean? And speaking of fun, Randy Orton, I believe on Monday, April 25th, 2002, was his debut in the WWE. So he's coming up on 20 years in the company. He's going to have a big celebration this Monday night on Raw. John Cena posted a very nice tribute to Randy Orton on social media today. And a lot of people have been showing Randy Orton love. I have always, since day one, had Randy Orton's back. Like I said earlier, we're going to be doing a Backlash 2004 watch along tomorrow. I think that was the night that I became a true believer in Randy Orton. I already knew he had that kind of something special, but he hadn't shown me his toughness or his grittiness yet. And that match with Mick Foley was unbelievable at Backlash. So that'll be fun to watch tomorrow. But when you think about Randy Orton's career and everything that he's been through, I remember when him and John Cena first came in and it became clear that these are going to be WWE's two new guys. This is going to be their Austin Rock. This is going to be their Bret and Shawn. This is going to be their Hogan Warrior. It was this, we were all assuming, the fans were as well, that Randy Orton was going to be the star of the two. He was the third generation guy. He was the one that had a lot of that natural athleticism. John Cena, even though he can do some amazing things in there, is not really that athletic in terms of, like, Randy Orton is smooth. He's got that Randy Savage smoothness to him where he just glides around the ring. It just seems like very, very natural to him. Where John Cena can be a little clunky, a little sloppy, he can be real loud with his spot calling in the ring, and he certainly doesn't have a whole lot of finesse to him. And Randy Orton did. Randy Orton, a lot of fans maybe felt was better looking than John Cena too. He had more of the movie star look. And I remember when they both came in, I was more drawn to Randy Orton. I thought between those two, I had more, I don't want to say in common, but more, I found him the more relatable wrestler because I loved his daddy. Ace was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up as a kid. And of course, his grandfather too. He had it in his blood already. And I always liked second generation guys. I liked Bret. I liked Hennig. I liked all those guys back in the day. Now we got a third generation coming in. And I think at that point, Rock, other than Rock, he might have been the only other third generation guy by that point. It was really The Rock and then Randy Orton. Now you see him a little bit more frequently. But Randy Orton looked to be the guy that was poised to be the next megastar in the company. And I think that's what WWE wanted. He got on the map way before John Cena. He was in Evolution, winning Intercontinental titles when John Cena was still trying to find his niche as that rapper gimmick. And he was having some great segments, but he wasn't really setting the world on fire in the ring. He was getting more over from a charisma and character perspective, where Randy Orton had more the look and the ring savviness and ability. And he was the perfect guy to be taken in by someone like Triple H and Ric Flair, where John Cena was going in a completely different direction. They were two completely different characters, but Randy Orton seemed to be the guy. But then as the years went on, John Cena proved that he was a little bit ahead of Randy Orton on the maturity side of things. Randy Orton's a very good-looking kid. There's so few of us, So, when someone like us comes around, the chicks are going to be all over us and stuff. So Randy Orton had probably attitude problems. He already had kind of a tumultuous teenage life, when he went AWOL there, when he was in the military and stuff. And to kind of hammer all that out and then come into the WWE, find all the success at an early age, get all of this money, all this TV time, all this exposure at a young age, it's just the same thing we see in athletes. You give a 21-year-old $40 million, he's probably going to be an idiot. He's probably going to be Johnny Manziel or something. And Randy Orton was like that. And what I think I liked even more about Randy Orton is, even despite his behavioral problems, you heard I would read some of the reports on the dirt sheets and the websites back in the day, and you would read it and be like, what a fucking asshole this guy is. Oh my God. The shit he would say, the trouble he would get himself in, the multiple wellness policy violations, which I still believe something happened with one of them. I do believe he had 4, and you're supposed to be fired after 3. And he either worked one off or one fell off his record or something, but something shady was going on there. And despite all of his problems, WWE still kept him around. They punished him a little bit. I remember he just got flat out beat one night on Raw by Wade Barrett in like 6 minutes. Hit him with the hammer thing and just pinned Randy Orton right in the middle of the ring. And I'm like, oh shit, he's being punished, you know? And Randy Orton persevered through all of that and was able to come out on the other side of that as a person who experienced a lot of growth, and he matured. And now, when you fast forward to where he is now, after all the championships that he won, all the different phases of his career as a heel and a babyface, back to heel, all of the brutal feuds that he had, the personal feuds, the Triple H stuff, the punting people in the head. He was so vicious, and he created this legend killer Viper legacy for himself that despite all of his missteps, despite his suspensions, despite him getting in trouble here and there, he came out on the other side of this, now a man who's in his 40s, who's very seasoned. He's been around forever. He's worked with the greats, and now he finds himself in a locker room leadership role, and he seems completely at peace in life. He's got a wife. He's got a family. All of this stuff came together for him where it was a little bit different when he was single and dating people, and, you know, and I don't even know if he was married and divorced. I forgot, but, you know, his personal life changing as he grew, you know, and now he seems to be in just an amazing place in his life. And we've been watching him on TV lately having a ball. He looks like he's out there having the time of his goddamn life with Riddle. We watched him at the Hall of Fame. He was, you know, just having a great time in the audience there. Last night, there was some fan footage after Smackdown of him dancing to Bianca Belair's theme. He is just out there living his best life. And you love to see that, because Randy Orton could have easily gone in the other direction. Randy Orton was having all of these behavioral problems in one of the worst times in wrestling to have them, around the time where we were dealing with and experiencing a death every 3 fucking days due to drugs, alcohol, heart attacks, overdose, anything like that, suicides. So much ugliness was going around in wrestling, and has been going around in wrestling for so long, and a lot of this was happening right in the middle of Randy Orton's, you know, most difficult times in his life and career. So he's a success story in my mind. You know, anytime that somebody can learn from their mistakes, make those mistakes, then learn from them, make yourself a better person because of those mistakes, and go on to be a very, very well-respected legend in the business who is now there having a great time, offering help to the younger talent. The attitude problem is gone. And he now is just a professional. And that's kind of what I wanted Randy Orton to be all along. And he's super open about this. He owns everything. Every documentary he's interviewed for, or whenever he talks about his life and what he went through, he is the first one to say, I was an asshole. I was a fucking asshole, and I'm lucky to be here right now. And I appreciate that. So congratulations to Randy Orton. Maybe one day we'll do a big Randy Orton podcast. We'll talk about his specific championship runs and his wins, because Randy Orton had plenty of years there, especially in 2014 later on when it was him and Cena. Remember that stupid championship unification shit they did at like TLC in maybe 13. It was like at the end of the Survivor Series, remember? And then I don't remember what happened. I just remember doing a review of it that night and hating it and being like, this is the worst Survivor Series I've ever seen. And it had Randy Orton and John Cena, both of their titles, coming out face to face and basically setting up what they're going to do the next month when they unified the titles that would take us into 2014. And of course, Daniel Bryan winning the titles at WrestleMania 30. But even then, a lot of the John Cena hate was spilling over onto Randy Orton, because he was also winning a lot of championships. He was also in the top storylines all the time. And no matter how good you are, you know, if you're in the top storylines for too long, fans just start getting pissed. And, you know, even with Randy Orton, fans would not accept all of the good, you know, that he brings, you know, to a wrestling character and to a star, and the in-ring stuff that he does. He's very, very consistent and credible and reliable when he's in the ring. He always has good matches and he always delivers. So despite everything, despite WWE's shitty booking and, they're booking this guy too much or this guy too much or this guy's winning too much, I never let it affect my opinion of Randy Orton, just like I never let it affect my opinion of John Cena. Sometimes I wish WWE would have him win a couple of less matches, but I certainly didn't believe the guy was a cancer or was ruining wrestling or anything like that. The only thing ruining wrestling is WWE, not the people in the ring. It's them doing it. So put the blame there is always what I said. And Randy Orton, at the end of the day, too, I still like him more than John Cena. I still have John Cena's back, always have, always will. But when it comes to who I preferred to watch wrestle, Randy Orton. Randy Orton by a mile with John Cena. So big milestone there, 20 years in the company. And honestly, I think he can go 30. I do. At least when you look at him right now. 5 years from now, 2 years from now, things might change. Randy Orton might have a different outlook on life or might decide that he wants to maybe ride off into the sunset. The dude certainly isn't going to ever need to make any money again if he doesn't want to. So he can stay or go. It's completely up to him. And last we heard from him is he's not even close to being done yet. So I think he's got another decade left in him in the WWE. That's kind of exciting. Did you guys see the airline passenger that Mike Tyson punched? Jesus, I just saw the video of that on TMZ. I don't think any arrests were made in that, but it was a JetBlue flight in San Francisco, and some fan or some guy behind him was heckling him or bothering him or wanted a selfie or just harassing him in general, and Tyson turned around and peppered him a few times and bloodied him up a bit. Apparently this guy that he punched has got a pretty substantial rap sheet, spent some time in jail, and has all sorts of criminal activity. So not a whole lot of sympathy for him. I just don't know what would possess somebody to bother someone so much. You know, you hear about the wrestling fans that approach wrestlers in the lobbies and the gross dudes that put their arms all over a woman when they're hugging them, you know, in the meet and greets and stuff. I don't know what it is about people that just makes them believe they are just entitled to do and say whatever the fuck they want. So I'm glad that Mike Tyson popped that guy. Hopefully he will not get in any sort of trouble for that, Tyson, that is. So that's all I've got pretty much for the news. I just wanted to talk about Forbidden Door, wanted to talk about Bret Hart a little bit. And, of course, Roman Reigns and Randy Orton. Both of those milestones are extremely impressive, you know, especially for both of them. But Randy Orton spending 2 decades now in the same company is pretty awesome. Let me cruise over here to the chat because I know I got some super chats to knock out, and then we're going to briefly roll through last night's Smackdown and Rampage, and then I'll speak a little bit about Raw and Dynamite as well. I want to make sure I get all the way back up here to the top because I know there's at least 2 or 3 that I missed. Marcus the Entertainer, I want to thank you for that $5 as well. Your super chat reads, reports stated they taped audience chats, chants, and reactions for the video game in between Dynamite and Rampage, and the crowd was pretty wiped out. Okay, well, that explains it. When I tuned into to Rampage last night, I'm like, man, this crowd seems quiet. But yeah, if AEW had the fans doing a whole bunch of shit, yeah, that might have burned them out a little bit. That is a very good point. Interesting. Thank you for that tidbit, Marcus. I had no idea. Divine Ricks, thanks, dude, and good to see you back, man. Appreciate the $10 from you. Hey, Greg, congratulations to Randy Orton, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. What was your favorite Randy Orton feud? Yours was Christian and Mick Foley. That Christian program is extremely underrated. The one from like 2011 was so good. Their matches were so good. Mick Foley, I might have to put that one on there, and we're going to watch that match tomorrow night, Divine, so I hope you're here. But like I said earlier, that match with Foley, just like how it did with Triple H at the Rumble 2000, really made me a believer of Randy Orton. So I might go Mick Foley, but I have to give that some more thought. We're talking 20 years. He's had a lot of feuds. Who else did I miss? C-Mac, what's up, dude? Appreciate that $2 from you. And thank you to everyone else who has been chatting about all of my gum flapping. I was right about that 2013, right? Yeah, TLC 2013, Randy beat Cena, won both the belts. Then, of course, Batista came back, won the Rumble. Fans flipped out. Daniel Bryan was inserted into the Mania 30 main event. Won the titles and then coughed him up after he was injured, and John Cena won him anyway at Money in the Bank, only to get murdered by Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, which is one of the most favorite things I've ever seen. Let's briefly, and I'm talking briefly, run through last night's completely skippable Smackdown. My God, what a pile of nothing this show was. I paid zero attention to the Ronda and Charlotte contract signing. Couldn't give two fucks what any of those women have to say to each other. I'm excited to see the I Quit match at Backlash. I think it's going to be good, but in terms of what they're going to say to each other on the mic, don't care, walked away, barely even looked at it. I know Drew Gulak came out there. There was a little bit of scuffle. Charlotte got her arm hurt, and next week on SmackDown, that's already been taped, we are getting a Beat the Clock challenge between Ronda and Charlotte. So we will see that coming up on Friday. We also had Xavier defeating Butch again one-on-one. Butch drops another match, freaks out, loses his temper, and storms away. Apparently he's missing and already on a milk carton. So if you see Butch, tell him to call WWE because they're looking for him. Gunther won a squash match. Nothing much to say there. Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre's backstage with RK Bro earlier on in the show because McIntyre's got a main event lumberjack match coming up against Sami Zayn. So he's kind of recruiting some lumberjacks, but he's got a lot of history with Randy Orton dating back a couple of years when they traded the WWE title during the pandemic. And they basically buried the hatchet, said they're cool with each other and that Orton and Drew can count on RK Bro to be there as lumberjacks. So Drew appreciated that. And that also kind of planted the seed for McIntyre and Roman Reigns because Drew mentioned that, he wants to help RK Bro against the Bloodline. Sami Zayn is hiding out in the back listening to all this, and then he goes and approaches the Bloodline to recruit the Usos as lumberjacks for him later on as well. So that little bit right there kind of set the stage for what is looking like will be a McIntyre and Roman Reigns match at WrestleMania Backlash. And I don't know if they set anything there up at the taping or not. We'll have to wait and see, but it looks like that Shinsuke Nakamura stuff is just not going to happen. We had another one-on-one match. RK Bro and the Usos have been doing one-on-one matches against each other. Riddle beats Jey Uso this week. I believe he beat Jimmy Uso last week. Absolutely atrocious segment with Sasha and Naomi and Natalya and Shayna Baszler. Now, Sasha and Naomi, I will say, look fantastic as women's tag team champions. What an entrance. They both look marvelous. However, there's just not much of a division here for them to defend their titles against. Natty, who has been spending time in NXT and apparently is going to stay there, they do still have her on the main shows a little bit, and her and Shayna came out to confront Sasha and Naomi and say they want another shot at the titles or something, and just sputtered out these terribly delivered scripted lines. Funniest part was when Natalya goes, "I am a 3-time Guinness World Record holder." And McAfee, without even missing a beat, just screams, "That matters." Fucking cracked me up. Yeah, that matters. What is she even in the Guinness World Records for? Maybe I knew that and I forgot, but she's in the Guinness World Record books 3 times or something. I don't know or care, but what a line to deliver. Give me a break. What is Sasha and Naomi going to be like? "Oh, Guinness World Records, let's run away." Yeah. So that tag match is probably coming up next week. Who cares there? Madcap Moss defeated Garza in a one-on-one match. Baron Corbin attacked him after the match and stole his Andre trophy. So first we're stealing swords, now we're stealing trophies. And in the main event, we had Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre in a lumberjack match. The reason they made this match is so Sami Zayn can't run away, but he ran away anyway, despite Drew having a whole bunch of backup, and despite the funny thing is the ring announcer, little Samantha, says when she's making the introductions, "The lumberjacks have one job." She literally said they had one job, and they failed their one job, and that was to prevent either guy from leaving the ringside area, which Sami Zayn found a way out of there, ran away, ran up the aisle, and then, of course, Adam Pearce comes out to the stage, and you knew right away they were just going to make some bullshit for next week, and Pearce says that next week they're going to do a rematch, and this time he will really not be able to run away because it will be Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre in a steel cage match. So that will be on tap for next week. I can tell you right now, I will not be watching SmackDown next week. I will read the results probably today, just find out what happened and call it a day. I would ask you for them in the chat, but I don't want you to spoil it for people who do care. I personally don't, but let's have some respect for everybody else, and don't let anybody know what happens in the chat. But I will be reading that, and I'm not going to be really looking at SmackDown at all next week. Raw, on the other hand, this past week was great. was great. All sorts of fun shit going on there. We should talk about Austin Theory, or Theory, I should say, winning the United States title. I knew that was happening. A lot of fans were upset that Finn Balor didn't get much of a title run. Scorpio Sky didn't get much of a TNT title run over in AEW either. But this is something that didn't surprise me. Y'all, it's been decades of this shit. How long have we been used to this type of stuff? WWE just slapping a belt on someone and taking it off, or them not really getting that much of a run. Sometimes we see 3-month title runs where the guy man or woman does not wrestle at all on their respective show, or if they do, it's all losses and non-title matches. Title runs suck. So I am not surprised that WWE shit on Balor's U.S. title run, didn't even give him a chance to really do anything with it, and he was maybe a transitional guy to put the belt on Theory. WWE, obviously, since they're putting him in an angle with Vince McMahon, sees very big things in Theory, and they want him to be a very big deal. So he beat Finn Balor for the title. He took the selfie with Vince, the whole deal, and Theory is your new U.S. champion. That honestly doesn't upset me, only because the U.S. title's a goddamn joke, man. You know, like what's the difference? These title wins mean dick most of the time anyway. I'm bummed out that Balor didn't get a great run, but I really wasn't expecting him to have a great run anyway. He's never had a great run with anything he's ever fucking done there, and it's annoying. What Balor does now in the future, a lot of people think that he could be teaming up with AJ Styles to help combat Edge and Damian Priest. That makes a lot of sense. I also think that sometime down the line, you could put Finn Balor in Edge's group. It'd be a good way to bring the demon out of him again if you ever chose to do that. So I think maybe at first he'll be, kind of a Bullet Club guy with AJ there to combat against Edge, but we might see a turn coming. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Finn Balor joined Edge's group, unless Finn has just decided that he just wants to wait out the rest of this contract and get the hell out of there. I don't know. Don't even know what Balor's contract status is, how many years he's got left, how long he plans on sticking around. But if they want to turn him heel and throw him in Edge's stable, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I just think it's going to take a couple of weeks to get there if you choose to do that. Another thing I really liked on Monday Night Raw, even though just like the title change I could see coming from across the street, that was Rhea Ripley turning on Liv Morgan. They got a tag team title match, which of course you knew they were going to lose. They did. They've been teasing the split between these two for many, many weeks. Finally, Rhea Ripley attacks Liv Morgan, beats the shit out of her, and becomes a heel. And she's another one that we've all been hoping will go to Edge's faction. Having a woman in there would be great. And is there a better woman to put in Edge's faction than Rhea Ripley based on her look and what she's got going on? She would fit that stable like a glove, man. Or that stable would fit her like a glove, I should say. So Rhea's another woman that I'd like to see be stuck in there, and then maybe Balor can join later on down the road. And I guess maybe we'll get a one-on-one match. Maybe not even a Backlash. They might just do this shit on TV between Morgan and Ripley. We'll have to see. But I think it's possible that it could happen either on Raw or Backlash. Lie detector test was a lot of fun. Told y'all. I don't know why everybody thinks Ezekiel is really Elias. It's horse shit. I don't know what other proof you need. He's in possession of Elias's Twitter account. Twitter just doesn't give somebody's account to anyone. So they're going to give it to, family only. And that's why Ezekiel has possession of Elias's account now, because Elias is gone. And Kevin Owens and Chad Gable have been adamant that he's lying. We all know that he's not. So these idiots bring out a lie detector test, meet the parent style in the ring. And as much as I love Kevin Owens, how stupid do you have to be to look at Ezekiel and think he's Elias? If Ezekiel was Elias, he would be way more hairy. He would have a beard. He would have hair all over his chest. Ezekiel doesn't have any of that. I don't know what other proof Kevin Owens needs. Now, luckily for Kevin Owens, I forgave him instantly, because when he started talking about Chad Gable's GPA, he said he had a 2.0, which I'm 100% convinced that was a direct shout out to 2.0 in AEW. Kevin Owens likes those guys. He even wore an Everrise shirt on Raw one night, remember? So I liked Owens' little shout out there to 2.0. And then, of course, Gable corrected him and said 4.0. He goes, oh, yeah, 4.0. They ask Ezekiel if he's really Elias. He says no. And the lie detector test says he was telling the truth, which I knew all along. Then we had a match one-on-one with Ezekiel and Gable, and Ezekiel beat him because Ezekiel is also much better than Elias. Elias was losing a lot of his matches. Ezekiel is winning his. Again, just more evidence that This is all for real. Fans are, I don't know how fans don't see this the way I do. I don't know how Kevin Owens and Gable can be so blind. We also had the double wedding, which was equal parts funny and ridiculous and stupid. I don't really love wrestling weddings, but this one was so bonkers, and that Raw is 3 hours long. And, I can tolerate shit like this on a 3-hour show more than I can a 2-hour show. So it's a double wedding, Tozawa and Tamina and Dana Brooke and Reggie. R-Truth makes this thing worth it by officiating it, because without them, or being the officiant for the wedding, performing the ceremonies, and they had a lot of there was a lot of mix-ups during the ceremony. At one point, Tozawa went over to Tamina and Reggie went to Tamina and Tozawa went to Dana, and then Dana and Tamina got together, and then we saw like 4 24/7 title changes. Everybody got a chance to win the title, and in the end, I believe Dana Brooke kept it and ran away with it. I don't even remember. And help me out, did the weddings even go off? Are they actually married now? Are Tozawa and Tamina really married? Did he say, I do, and I now pronounce you husband and wife? It was just a silly-ass segment that I was just chuckling at, and didn't really have a problem with it. I don't care when wrestling wants to get silly, as long as there's time to get silly, and that was fine. It was what it was. And then in the main event, that was kind of cool. Cody Rhodes was out earlier in the night doing a segment with Seth Rollins where he challenged Cody to face a mystery opponent in the main event, and Seth Rollins introduces his good buddy Kevin Owens as Cody's opponent, which on paper is awesome. Cody and Kevin Owens, have we seen that match? I don't think we have. Owens came in 15. Cody left in 16. They might have cross paths in a Rumble or something, but I don't know. I don't think they really ever worked together. So that's awesome that we got this one-on-one match, even though we probably weren't going to get a real winner here, which we didn't. Seth Rollins remained on the outside of the ring for this match, and he's yelling at Kevin Owens when he's out there while the referee is counting, and he's telling him to get back in the ring, and Owens just gets pissed at him and flips him off and walks away and gets intentionally counted out. And then Seth Rollins attacks Cody from behind, and that's how the show goes off the air. And we're going to get that Cody and Seth rematch at Backlash. And speaking of which, here's what we got for Backlash so far. At least here's what I've got. Let me know if I'm missing one. Roman Reigns taking on Drew McIntyre, probably. Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. We got the Usos and the Street Profits to unify the tags. Ronda and Charlotte in an I Quit match for the SmackDown Women's title. We're going to get Madcap Moss versus Drew McIntyre, which I believe is also official. And I think we're going to get Becky and Bianca again, because Bianca Belair had this segment on Raw where she beat up Sonya Deville, and then she got fined $1 for it. And I was thinking that was going to be the Backlash match, Sonya against Bianca. But we're getting that match this week on Raw. So Bianca actually defends her title in Knoxville, right? I think Raw's in Tennessee this week. And which I don't know where the UK tour is. That must just be SmackDown. I don't think there's any UK TV shows coming. I think the SmackDown crew is on a house show tour in the UK next week. Raw will be in Tennessee this week. I think the week after in Greensboro. So they're going to do the title match on Raw. So what I think is going to happen between Bianca and Sonya on Monday is that Becky will interfere or something, and or attack Bianca one way or the other. I think Becky will make her presence known, and Becky and Bianca rematch will be made for Backlash. That's what I'm guessing. So I can't see it being Bianca and Sonya now at Backlash, since Becky is booked for Monday. So that's what I think we're going to get. And like I said, they've probably laid the groundwork for a couple of more matches. Looks like we got about 6 or 7-ish confirmed. We probably won't have any more than 8. And that'll be coming up on May 8th next month. Let's just quickly talk about AEW before I get out of here, because it's about to be the bottom of the hour and I got to roll and get my ass to work. But last night's Rampage, I thought was a good show, but like I said, the crowd seemed a little bit dead, and somebody informed us in the chat that that was likely due to AEW recording fan reactions for their video game and requesting that the fans go apeshit for half an hour, which might have burnt them out a little bit. But Adam Cole did defeat Tomohiro Ishii in an Owen Hart qualifier. Jay White showed up to help out, took out Rocky Romero and Orange Cassidy, I believe, to help Cole get the win there. So he is now officially in the Owen Hart tournament, and he's an early favorite for me. Still haven't seen really the brackets. I think there's only 3 or 4 men who have qualified. We got a few more women who have, but Cole is an early favorite there. And O'Reilly Kyle O'Reilly is also qualified too, correct? Cole O'Reilly 3 in AEW. How many times did they work in NXT? 2 or 3 times. But we're going to get that rematch, I think, in the Owen tournament. I would definitely set it up in a way to where we get Cole and O'Reilly one-on-one, for sure. Lance Archer killed poor Serpentico in a squash. Eddie Kingston defeated Daniel Garcia and then even talked smack to him on the mic after that. I really enjoyed that. And we finally heard Hook speak. Danhausen has been trying to get Hook's attention. He's been ghosting him the whole time. He's been impervious to his curses. Even on Wednesday, Danhausen challenged Hook to a fight, and Hook just walked away. And here, Hook is being interviewed backstage, and he walks around the corner to see Danhausen fucking up a big bag of Lay's potato chips. You can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things. You can go after somebody's family. You can insult somebody's wife. What you don't do is fuck with my man's Lay's. That's it. And that was enough to bring words out of Hook's mouth, shove Danhausen up against a wall, and he goes, "You want my attention? You got it now. Don't fuck with my chips." So, Danhausen, rest in peace. Sorry, pal. And then, of course, in the main event, Jade Cargill defeating a very game Marina Shafir, who's been pretty impressive in her last couple of outings. And I thought this was a really good opponent for Jade because Marina's tough. And she did take Jade to the limit. Her baddies were at ringside and got involved a little bit, beating down Marina Shafir. In the end, of course, though, Jade Cargill advances to 30-0 and is undefeated still and currently still TNT champion. Who is going to knock her off? Really excited at that prospect. Somebody's going to beat Jade at some point, and that's going to be a major win. AEW needs to choose that person carefully. Whoever they make beat Jade, make sure it's going to mean something, be a big deal, not harm Jade too much while elevating the person that beat her at the same time. All that's got to be a very delicate balance, but I'm looking forward to when that day comes, when it's time for Jade to be pinned. It's going to be awesome. But as of right now, she's still kicking ass. And looks like $1 million out there with that TBS title. Dynamite this past week, which we watched together, of course, had the New Japan Forbidden Door Super Show announced. The great opener between Punk and Dustin Rhodes was a lot of fun because somebody had pulled up the old Bret Hart Goldust match from Raw 25 years ago, and CM Punk, as he does in a lot of his matches, recreates a lot of Bret Hart spots, and I really liked the little show respect and handshake at the end between two of the best. Dustin Rhodes is 53 years old, still in there wrestling like he was when he was 33, and working with CM Punk. These are the two literal definitions of the word professional. So seeing them come together, show respect at the end, Punk getting the win was awesome. Loved it. And, of course, we had Kyle O'Reilly being Jungle Boy to qualify for the Owen tournament as well. So Dynamite was very good this week. I probably enjoyed that show the most. Raw was a close number 2. Then I'll probably go with Rampage 3 and Smackdown, a distant 4. I have not been that bored with a Smackdown show in quite some time as I was last night. One of the worst I've ever seen in terms of just the skippability of it. You know what I mean? Just complete nonsense, garbage. But anywho, that is enough for today. I knew this was going to be a small audience because there's nothing going on. And this week will probably be a lot more of the same. If you guys don't mind, try to get those likes up for me because that's a J-Brone amount of likes there. I'd really appreciate that. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I need to be answering here in the chat before I get out of here. Oh, Maki Ito being the person to beat Jade Cargill. I don't know. I don't think Riho is a good option either. I could see Britt Baker because that's something WWE would do. If Charlotte was there, they'd have Charlotte beating her. But Britt, to me, is already a made woman. We'll have to see how much AEW treats Britt like WWE treats Charlotte, if they really try to make those two counterparts, or if they try to give that big win against Jade to somebody else that could help, build up that division. Because even though I personally believe the women's division has made pretty good improvements and deserves a little bit of credit for that, I'm in the minority. A lot of people still consider the women's division to be in AEW to be nothing but a pile of shit. I don't think it's great, but I think it's a hell of a lot better than it was when they started. So I've seen improvements. Other people have not, but that's just where we differ. But, oh yeah, we got UFC going on tonight too. Punchy face. So let me know if anybody gets punched at UFC. Somebody probably will, most likely. Punches usually happen at MMA shows. Jamie Hayter's a good one because girl can fight. Girl can fight. That's a really good pick. So, yeah, and by then, I think this is something that you don't have to talk about in the next several weeks. I'm talking fall. Let's talk Thanksgiving here. Let's talk Halloween, Thanksgiving, something like that for Jade Cargill. I am totally cool with her run extending way beyond the summer. So we'll see if they go that far with it or if they don't. Either way, it'll be fun to find out. That is going to be it for me. I got to get out of here now, guys. Thank you very much for being here on your Saturday. Don't forget Backlash 2004 tomorrow night. That's going to be fun. We'll be up here at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we will watch Mick Foley and Randy Orton fuck each other up. You know what the funny thing is I don't even know the rest of that card. I'm pretty sure it's a rematch of WrestleMania 20, the triple threat, right? Benoit, Shawn, and Triple H. I even think I know the finish. I'm pretty sure Shawn taps out because it's in Montreal, right? So maybe I remember a little bit more about that show than I thought. But those are still the only two matches I can think of. Is Orton and Foley and Benoit retaining. So they were still doing separate pay-per-views back then, right? Raw and SmackDown shows. It'll be fun to take that trip back down memory lane tomorrow night. So make sure you are here with us tomorrow. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday night.